The day my mother found out how much money I earned was the day she decided I no longer belonged to myself. Before I tell you what happened, I want to ask you something. What country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. And if family drama stories like this keep you hooked, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because what happened next completely changed my relationship with my family forever. I'm Emily, 33 years old, and for most of my life, I was the daughter nobody paid attention to. My younger brother Ryan was the golden child. If Ryan failed a class, Mom blamed the teacher. If Ryan lost a job, Mom blamed the economy. If Ryan spent all his money, Mom blamed everyone except Ryan. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs through college, paid my own bills, and built my life from the ground up. Nobody helped me. Nobody offered me a safety net. For years, my mother barely called unless she needed something. That was why I found it strange when she suddenly started texting me every day. "How's work going? Are you still living in that nice house? You must be doing really well these days." At first, I thought she was finally trying to reconnect. I couldn't have been more wrong. A week later, I discovered the real reason. I work as a senior marketing consultant, and after years of hard work, I had finally landed a major contract. One of my coworkers posted a congratulatory message online mentioning the success of the project. Apparently, someone forwarded it to my mother. The post didn't reveal my exact income, but it made one thing very clear. I was making far more money than anyone in my family had imagined. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. Standing there was my mother, and beside her was Ryan. My 30-year-old brother was wearing designer sunglasses, holding an expensive coffee, and looking as smug as ever. Neither of them had called. Neither of them had asked if they could come. Mom smiled like she owned the place. Then she looked past me, into my house, and said something that immediately told me this wasn't a family visit. It was a business transaction, and according to her, I was about to be the one paying the bill. I knew something was wrong the second my mother walked into my house without waiting for an invitation. She looked around my living room, my kitchen, and the large windows overlooking the backyard, as if she were inspecting property she planned to claim. Ryan followed behind her, grinning. "Nice place," he said. "Bigger than I expected." I crossed my arms. "Why are you both here?" Mom sat down on my couch and sighed dramatically. "Honey, we need to talk about family." Whenever my mother started a sentence with those words, it usually meant she wanted something. I stayed standing. "What about family?" Mom exchanged a glance with Ryan. Then she smiled. "Your brother has an incredible opportunity." I almost laughed. Ryan hadn't held the same job for more than 6 months in years. "What kind of opportunity?" I asked. Ryan leaned forward. "I'm thinking about opening my own business." That surprised me, not because it sounded impressive, because Ryan had never shown interest in running any kind of business before. "What business?" I asked. His face immediately turned blank. "Well, we're still figuring that part out." That was my first red flag. Mom quickly jumped in. "The details don't matter. What matters is that he needs support." I could already feel where this conversation was going. My stomach tightened. "Support from who?" Mom looked directly at me.
You.
There it was, the real reason for their visit. Ryan sat back confidently as if the discussion had already been settled. Mom continued, "You've been blessed financially. Family helps family. Ryan deserves a chance to succeed too." I stared at her. "Deserves?" She nodded. "He's had a harder path than you." I nearly choked. A harder path? I had worked nights, weekends, and holidays for years. Ryan spent most of his 20s partying and quitting jobs whenever they became inconvenient. Then Mom said the number. "We think $200,000 should be enough to get him started." For a moment, I honestly thought I had misheard her. $200,000. Not a loan. Not an investment. Not even a proposal. A demand. Ryan smiled and added, "That's really not that much compared to what you're making." That sentence hit harder than the amount itself, because it told me they hadn't come to ask. They had come expecting me to say yes. What neither of them realized was that I already knew something about Ryan that was about to destroy their entire plan, and I was going to let them keep talking before I revealed it. I looked at my mother and Ryan for a few seconds without saying a word. The silence seemed to make them uncomfortable. Good, because I was remembering something Ryan clearly hoped I'd forgotten. A month earlier, I'd received a phone call from an old friend who worked at a local bank. During a casual conversation, she mentioned seeing Ryan come in repeatedly with different loan applications. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. But later, curiosity got the better of me. After some digging through public records, I discovered something shocking. Ryan wasn't trying to start a business. Ryan was drowning in debt. Massive debt, credit cards, personal loans, missed payments, collection notices. The total amount was well over $180,000. Suddenly, the business opportunity made perfect sense. This wasn't startup money. It was a bailout, and they thought I was stupid enough to fund it. I looked directly at Ryan. Tell me something. His smile faded slightly. What? How much debt are you in? The color drained from his face. Mom immediately jumped in. That's none of your business. I laughed. Funny, you want $200,000, but his finances aren't my business? Ryan shifted nervously in his seat. I could see panic beginning to creep into his eyes. Mom glared at me. Someone's been filling your head with lies. I reached for my phone. Then I opened several documents. Public records, court filings, financial judgments, all legally available information. I placed the phone on the coffee table. Ryan looked down. The moment he saw the documents, his face turned completely white. Mom grabbed the phone. As she scrolled, her confident expression slowly disappeared. What is this? She whispered. I folded my arms. The truth. Ryan suddenly stood up. This isn't what it looks like. Really? I said, because it looks exactly like someone who spent years living beyond his means. Mom looked back and forth between us. For the first time all afternoon, she seemed unsure whose side she was on. Then Ryan made a mistake. A huge mistake. Instead of apologizing, he pointed at me and shouted, None of this would matter if you just gave me the money. The room went silent. Even Mom looked shocked. And in that moment, I realized something important. Neither of them felt guilty. Neither of them regretted trying to use me. They simply felt angry that I'd caught them. What happened next would completely destroy the image my mother had spent years protecting, and it would happen in front of people she desperately wanted to impress. A week later, my mother and Ryan got exactly what they never expected: consequences. Ryan's debt problems became impossible to hide. Several family members found out the truth after creditors began contacting him. The story spread quickly through the family, and suddenly, the future businessman image my mother had been promoting completely fell apart. The biggest shock came when relatives discovered that Ryan hadn't been trying to build a business at all. He had simply wanted someone else to clean up the mess he created, and that someone was supposed to be me. For the first time in years, people started asking me for my side of the story. When they heard everything, most of them were furious. Not at me, at my mother and Ryan. My mother called several times afterward, trying to explain herself, but I finally set a boundary I should have set years earlier. I told her, I love you, Mom, but I'm done being treated like a bank account. Then I hung up. Months later, my life became more peaceful than it had ever been. I focused on my career, my friends, and the people who truly cared about me. Ryan was forced to deal with his own financial problems instead of dumping them on someone else. And for the first time in my life, I stopped feeling guilty for saying no. That was the real victory. Not the money, not the argument, the freedom. The freedom to choose myself after years of being treated as the responsible daughter who was expected to sacrifice everything. And honestly, I've never been happier. If you've ever had a family member who felt entitled to your success, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You never know who might need the reminder that setting boundaries isn't selfish sometimes. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. And that's how this story ended.